I'm Enchantress of Numbers, and this is my submission for SGDQ2018 for Loom of any % expert difficulty. So this is a point-and-click adventure game from LucasArts, and it uses the Scum engine, which is familiar from games like The Secret of Monkey Island and stuff like that. We're basically the plot of this game. You are playing as Bobbin Threadbare. On his 17th birthday, he's a member of the Guild of Weavers, and he was summoned to meet with the elders because he was actually pulled from the loom and not born in the traditional sense. There's a big audio drama that precedes the story of this game, and so that's where you learn about that. And so he's not actually been able to learn anything about the trade of weaving, and the elders are going to decide his fate at his coming of age, whether or not to allow him to learn the trade. So we're making the long walk into the Great Hall where the Great Loom is. And so for the speed tech, a lot of it is we're just going to try to skip the cutscenes as quickly as possible. You can see the elders there, but we're going to skip this. The elders punish Hetchel. She was a woman who raised Bobbin, and she was teaching him how to weave before his 17th birthday. They punished her by casting the spells in this game are called drafts, and they cast the Transcendence draft on Hetchel, which puzzled and scared them when it turned her into an egg, which was the egg that we just saw. And then a swan crashed through the window, the stained glass window. You saw the hole there, and cast Transcendence on everyone in the island except for Bobbin. So everyone else turned into swans and flew through a rift in the sky. So we picked up the distaff, which belonged to I believe Elder Atropos, and we used the one draft that we knew, the open draft, to hatch the egg, and a baby swan came out, and that was Hetchel, and she explained that the swan came to save everyone from the third shadow that was about to cover the world, and now Bobbin is trying to find his flock. So this early portion of the game is kind of like a fetch quest or a collection quest. We need to get all the spells or all the drafts that'll allow us to get off the island. So there's a bunny in the brambles. We scare the bunny off, and then the owl that was on the tombstone gets the bunny, and now there's owls in each of these 4 holes. If you tried to look at them before, one of the holes was empty. And so then from each hole we look at, we get another note of the night vision draft, which will become important later in the game. So a little note about the way the RNG works in this game. Every draft, there are 3 possible drafts that you can get, but basically they're randomized together. They're not randomized independently of each other. So once you know this night vision draft, then you can know what all of the other draft note sequences are gonna be. So here I am actually doing a slight divergence from the world record route. I was trying to test out a different route to basically on a gravestone in the graveyard, there's a note that says something about the day the sky is split asunder. So it's kind of a hint to let you know to play the opening draft on the sky, which causes the sky to open up and lightning to shoot and break that tree. And so we skipped the cutscene where that happens, but it's kind of a neat thing. So now we're heading back to town, where we have to learn a couple more drafts, and then we can use the tree that broke to leave the island. So we're going to have to leave the island in order to really get through the rest of the story and find our flock. So the first room we're going to go into, the first tent, there's actually 2 possible drafts you can learn in here. We learn a draft to dye things green from the dye pot, but also if you knock over that round flask, you can learn the emptying draft.
Grass
and
green. I hate that color.
It's important to note that all of the drafts, some of them are palindromes, like the night vision, so it doesn't have a reverse, but like the draft to dye the wool, you can reverse it to bleach the wool if you just play the draft backwards. So here's the first place we're going to use the night visions draft, which is going to let us see what's going on in this tent. And as you can see with the splits, we're losing a lot of time, and that's because of that route divergence. Opening the sky I actually did after the split in the world record, so we'll see that time made up on the next split. So we learned the spinning draft, which allows us to, we have to use it first. Basically, you have to show that you can use the drafts before it'll let you learn the next note. So we learned the F note, and we spun the straw into gold. So the F note is really what you need to be able to leave the island. A little bit of the history of this game. Loom was released in 1990 for DOS on floppy disk with 16-color EGA graphics. That same version was also soon released afterwards for the Amiga, the Atari ST, and Macintosh. But then later in 1992, it was re-released for CD-ROM with updated graphics and fully voiced dialogue, which that's the version we're playing now on, it was actually released in 2008 or 2009 on Steam, and so that's the version we're playing now as the Steam version. So the water spout teaches us, from there we learn the twisting draft, and if we just play that in reverse, we can untwist the water spout, which will allow us to go through. If you try to pass the water spout, you'll get sucked up in, and Bobbin Threadbare has this wonderful scream that we'll see later, but you'd get to hear it early on there. So now we've made it to this next island, and this is where the glassmakers and the shepherds are. So we've just learned the G note. So see, we made up that time, and so the time looks a lot better now. And so heading back into the forest back here, we're going to run into the shepherds, and the shepherds are very cautious of outsiders because someone or something has been stealing all of their sheep, and from them we learn this invisibility / revisibility draft. So we need that before we can advance. So after dealing with them just long enough to learn the draft, we leave, and we're now going to head over to the Emerald City, as it looks like, which is where the Guild of Glassmakers live. So one thing about the universe of Loom is that everyone is in some kind of a guild, typically, and so Bobbin's of the Guild of Weavers, and we're going to meet the Glassmakers, and we already met the shepherds, so there are some more guilds along the way. The game, it's theorized that maybe it takes place in the distant future on Earth, but there's nothing in the lore that directly identifies it as that, just that it takes place in the year like 8092 or something like that. So we just cast the invisibility draft on the workers up there, which will allow us to get past them. We just skipped a cutscene where we met Bishop Mandible and found out that he's trying to buy a scrying sphere from the glassmakers, which will allow him to see into the future 8 hours, and the glassmaker tells him that their best scrying spheres only see 4 hours into the future, and so Bishop Mandible is trying to put some pressure on them.
I don't doubt the Crucible's getting tired of bowing and scraping. To him.
So this right here is actually a scrying sphere that we can look into, and it's where we're going to learn another draft called the Terror Draft, which we'll use. It doesn't show us the effects on the scrying sphere, just that we cast the draft, and then the shepherds run away. There's not a way to skip this cutscene as far as I know. Most of the time you just press the escape key to skip the cutscenes. So that's the main thing we wanted to learn. There's some evidence from that scrying sphere. If you look at it multiple times, it'll show you like 3 or 4 different scenes. And one of those shows a volcano erupting, which never actually happens in the game. So that's kind of a hint towards a sequel. And there's actually some... there were actually 2 potential sequels that were discussed for this game that have not yet been made nor released. One called Forge and another called The Fold, and I'll get into more detail about those later. So the bishop wants this scrying sphere to see 8 hours into the future, and you know, I bet he doesn't have any nefarious reasons for wanting that, right? So, another interesting thing, I don't remember if I mentioned it, but the game, the CD version of this game also came with a 30-minute audio drama that gives the sort of the background information on the universe, and so we use the Terror draft on these shepherds, and what it does is it turns us into a dragon, and they run away scared. Although Bobbin didn't really know that he turned into a dragon. So this shepherd is asleep, and those sheep, if we interact with them, they'll jump over the fence and wake up the shepherd, and we'll actually learn the sleep draft from them that you're supposed to... I think you're supposed to learn it, but it's not... it's easy to miss, and they don't have any way built into the game to force you to learn it. So we skip it, just because it takes more time. We have to go inside this hut where we're going to learn the healing draft, and a little bit more plot is going to develop. So it's basically a cutscene that we can't skip.
Hello
so
there. I see you've noticed my little friend.
She doesn't look at all well.
She isn't, and my songs of healing don't seem to be bringing her much comfort. I wish I were better with him. The flock is out to pasture. You'll find them there. Go forth, wizard, and may you return safely to our fold.
So the what you learned in a little bit that I skipped is that I don't think they know that it's a dragon, but there's a dragon that's coming and stealing all the sheep. So it's hard for them to get the sheep out there, and they've got an order of like 10,000 sheep for Bishop Mandible or something. The reason why he needs all these sheep is probably well-intentioned. So we use the dye spell to dye all the sheep green to protect them, which... there's that scream. So the dragon kidnaps us, and we go to the dragon's lair in the volcano.
Well, what have we here? Oh, that's what comes of being in such a blazing hurry, I guess. I thought you looked a bit scrawny. Oh, why, you'd hardly make a decent kin.
So we're going to unspin this gold into straw, and then you're supposed to use the sleep draft to... then the dragon's fiery breath will ignite the straw and light it up. I think as a softlock prevention method, they let the terror draft also set the fire, so So we just cast the terror draft on the dragon. So
Fire! You haven't heard the last of me, you cheeky brat!
I'm sure there will be no negative consequences for that. I bet we never even interact with that dragon again. So now we're in kind of a maze going through the caves, trying to find our way to that other exit on the left. And it's easiest to navigate with the casting the night vision draft. I don't even know if the game will really let you advance without casting it. I haven't actually tried. That would save, a handful of seconds to navigate this without casting the night vision draft. But it may actually be required later because there's a draft that we'll learn in these caves. So the potential time save may not even matter because it'd be negated by that. So one of the ways that I think a lot of people know about this game is in the games The Secret of Monkey Island on Melee Island in the Scum Bar. There's a pirate with a big button that says, "Ask me about Loom," and if you talk to him, he'll happily divulge all sorts of marketing information. He will say, You mean the latest masterpiece of fantasy storytelling from Lucasfilms Brian Moriarty? Why, it's an extraordinary adventure with an interface of magic, stunning high-resolution 3D landscapes, sophisticated score and musical effects, not to mention the detailed animation and special effects, elegant point-and-click control of characters, objects, and magic spells. Beat the rush! Go out and buy Loom today! So, I think that's pretty good advice.
That way.
So, from this pool here is where we learn the reflect draft, and so that's why I'm theorizing that maybe you have to have the night vision draft cast to be able to learn that draft. So so now we've done that, we've made our way, we're basically out of the cave, so we have to use the untwist draft that we learned from that water spout to get this staircase to allow us to pass through. So we're about to run into the blacksmith's guild, and we'll meet our friend Rusty Nailbender. So he's a very lazy blacksmith, and he was sent out to... Oh, hey, there we go. There's the dragon. That's probably the last we'll see of the dragon. So he was sent out to gather firewood, but as you can see, there's not a lot around. So he's sleeping. So you're supposed to cast the reverse of the sleep draft on Rusty to wake him up, but anything will wake him up. So as another softlock thing. So then he tells us what I just told you, and now we'll cast the reflect draft on him. So now we look like Rusty Nailbender, and he looks like Bobbin Threadbare, and that's surely not going to cause anything negative to happen.
Hello, young Nailbender.
So we surely won't run into that dragon ever again, right? So the man at the gate let us in, told us that Rusty's father is really mad at Rusty for taking so long, and we better get in and talk to him as soon as possible. So we're making our way through this area where one of the few places that has actual background sound. He yells at us for bringing back such a small piece of wood, and then we fall asleep on the straw, and then find out the dragon came, and thinking that Rusty Nailbender was us, was Bobbin Threadbare, the dragon eats Rusty, and then Hetchel, the baby swan, flew into the chimney and grabbed the distaff, which was thrown into the fire, and slid it under the door for us. So now we're able to advance further, and some more background sound. So, and there we see Bishop Mandible again.
The final blade is even now in the hands of our most skilled blade shaper, Your Excellency. How's it coming there, Edgewise?
I'm just putting the edge on the last sword, sir.
Good to hear it. No slacking off now. Let's get it finished.
You'll share with me a historic moment, Foreman. The forging of the 10,000th sword marks the end of our preparations. How much longer must I wait?
The steel will ring out its final defeat, sir. Not much longer now.
Very good then. Carry on.
So now we cast the twisting draft on the sword, which draws attention to us, and the bishop sees us and is not very happy, so he takes us to his stronghold, where we will meet Cobb, who is actually the person who shows up in Loom in Monkey Island with the Ask Me About Loom button. So Bishop Mandible told Cobb about the Weaver's powers. Cobb doesn't believe it, so we open the cage and hop out. Then the bishop takes our distaff. We try to look into the scrying sphere. Cobb stops us and proposes a trade to look under our hood, which is supposed to bring death to anyone who looks under the hood of a weaver. And then, which it kills him. And then we go out. Bishop Mandible uses the open draft on the cemetery, and it opens a rift into the land of the undead, and a being known as Chaos comes through, and Bishop Mandible tries to command Chaos and to work for him to help him take over the world, and Chaos responds basically by killing Bishop Mandible, and Chaos has plans of her own to take over the world. So now we're basically in cleanup mode. We are going to go back to all the places that we've touched, and people are dead, and we're going to use the healing draft we learned from Fleece, the shepherd, and we're going to heal everyone and close the rift. So the talk about the sequels, the first one was going to be called Forge, and it was going to tell the story of Rusty Nailbender after this game. And then the third one was going to be called The Fold, and it was going to tell the story of Fleece, the shepherd. So unfortunately, neither of those have seen release, and I don't know that we will ever see that release, unfortunately. So Chaos has come through and killed most of the shepherds. We're going to heal these two and close the rift, and make our way back. So the other thing is we're going to come up on the Shore of Wonder, and we're going to see a swan who turns out to be Bobbin's mother. The tombstone on Loom Island that mentioned opening the sky was for Bobbin's mother. So we find out that she wasn't actually dead. What happened was that she was banished from the island for pulling an unforeseen child out of the loom, and that was Bobbin. And so all of the elders were afraid of Bobbin, and so that's why they didn't let him learn any loom weaving or anything like that. And so we also learned that Bobbin's mother came and visited him on his birthday every year. And so because she was banished from the island and was told she couldn't ever set foot on the island, but since she was a swan, she could fly and see. And so she would come like in the very early morning around dawn to see Bobbin briefly before leaving. And So then now we have to go back to Loom Island
Welcome, Bobby.
to face
You have joined us
Chaos.
here at last.
So we're going to see Chaos come in with the scythe we saw the glassmakers sharpening. Chaos actually stole that scythe. And so Chaos comes in chasing Hetchel as the bird, the baby duck or whatever, and Chaos invites Bobbin to serve as an advisor, and Bobbin turns that down. Hetchel will tell Bobbin to unmake the loom, but he doesn't know how, so then Hetchel tries to tell him, and Chaos casts the silence draft on Hetchel. So we just reverse that to give her voice back. Then Chaos is gonna cast the shaping draft, which turns Hetchel into a cooked swan, I guess. And so we reverse that to turn Hetchel back to normal. Then Chaos casts the unmaking draft on Hetchel, which coincidentally taught us the unmaking draft that we used to unmake the loom. So there's a hint that it's a palindrome, so you don't really know how to reverse it, but there's a hint that maybe we can save Hetchel in the future because a feather of hers was left. So we unmade the loom, and it creates this rift that separates it into two sides, one controlled by Chaos and one by the Weavers. And so we're going to cast Transcendence on ourselves to finish the game, where we'll turn into swans too, and we're going to take our side of the pattern from the rift and pull it away and try to fix it. And then that's the future, where the plot's supposed to go. It leaves this cliffhanger.
And know that we will most assuredly meet again.
I am ready, Mother. Let's go.
So yeah, the Chaos leaves a very foreboding cliffhanger for a sequel, but we have yet to actually see that. So, the swans fly off with their side of the pattern, and then the credits roll, and that is Loom on the any % expert difficulty. And so once again, I'm Enchantress of Numbers, and this is for SGDQ 2018. Thanks for watching.